So one of the common questions I get from people interested in Puerto Rico real estate is how to find a good property manager. Well, fortunately, I happen to know one. Today, I have with me Gerardo Borri, and he's doing a really good job managing our rental property down in Dorado. So I thought it would be a good idea to have a conversation about the Puerto Rico rental market. Gerardo, welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
All right, let's jump right in. So how did you get into property management, and how long have you been in the business?
I've been around 4 years in property management. My family has their own commercial properties, and I used to help working with the rentals and collections. So after Maria, this job opportunity arrived doing property management for HOAs, apartments. So I started it working with them, helped them on accounting, and then moved forward more in their complexes and managing and working with maintenance and landscaper employees. So, and I started to get a liking to that profession. So I decided to, besides working with accounting, starting my own company of property management.
Awesome. So how many units are you currently managing?
At this moment, I'm working with 4 properties uh, on my own, besides the ones for my family. Besides that, we have other properties that we remodel and do quick maintenance, and that's it.
Tell me a little bit more about the services that you provide for property owners.
The main services we do is property management. We help them get any contractors, be more as a project manager in their properties. Uh, we oversight everything that goes on, any situation, and help with the tenants if they have. We also provide maintenance services, landscaping, or any handyman projects that they need.
When you have clients that are off the island, mainlanders, how often do you check on the properties for them?
I normally do once a week personal visits to keep track of how it goes and anything else they need. And if there's any emergency, then we go every time that emergency erupts.
You mentioned emergencies. I'm curious the kind of emergencies that typically come up. And I'm also curious about the kinds of issues that mainlanders need to be aware of that are common on the island, like issues with mold or, just painting all the time, just those kinds of things that you may not think about coming from a northern climate.
So one of the few major issues are mold, because it rains a lot here in Puerto Rico, and so the walls and the structure of the building starts to get damaged time by time. So if you don't keep doing monthly and recurring maintenance, it will affect the building, and mold will erupt. Besides that, some of the properties that are near the coast and the beach, they get affected by the salt. So it's some of them have difficulty maintaining all their windows and metal areas in their building, because they tend to rust a lot.
Yeah, I remember moving down to the island and being surprised at how many paint stores there are down there. And, it's like paint stores per capita is huge. And then I realized the climate is so harsh, you really have to repaint, every 3 to 4 years just to kind of keep the outside of the buildings, from deteriorating.
Yes, the outside, besides doing the painting, you have to each 3 months give it like a coat to protect that wall and clean it from any rust. But besides that, there's a high demand on paint. And if it's in a community that they have their own HOA or their own board, uh, they tend to be very picky, keeping all the houses intact and in the same conformity of color. So you have to always keep track of all those communities.
Yeah, I remember also moving down there as a northerner, and I know native Puerto Ricans laugh at me for this, but air conditioning. We were AC dependent down there, and so it seemed like we had to be maintaining these air conditioners like every 3 or 4 months, and it just seemed like they only lasted a couple of years or a few years. I don't know. It just seemed we replaced, I think, just about every AC unit in our house, and we had 7 of them. So is that
Yeah.
common that people need to pay so much attention to them, or did we buy bad ACs?
It depends on two situations. One, it can be bad ACs. You Some of them tend to be cheaper, but don't last long because, like you said, you have to use it constantly. So some of these ACs are not meant to be running long periods, and so if you don't do every maintenance every 3 months and check if it's all going smoothly, then they tend to go and collapse. So it's good to do a routine check every 3 months, but also do a research of what is better for your area and the amount of hours you're gonna use it. So both of them are very important.
I know one of our challenges down there being, not Spanish speakers. I mean, we tried. We had what I called cave Spanish. Mi español es muy malo, right? Um,
Right.
I think one of the biggest challenges was speaking with tradespeople because not a lot of them spoke English. And we had varying degrees of success with people. I mean, generally they did good work when they showed up. And
Correct.
they didn't always show up. They didn't always communicate that they weren't going to show up, or they said they wouldn't show up and they did show up. I mean, or it would be weeks later when they showed up. So, we have jokes around Lake Tahoe here about the tradespeople because we have Tahoe time, and if it's a good day, they'll be out skiing instead of coming to your
Yeah.
house to work on it. Puerto Rico, that seemed to be times 10. So, but I'm kind of a gringa, so what is your experience dealing with the tradespeople? I know since we hired you, it's been much better, but tell me about your perceptions there.
Before the COVID-19, there were a few tradespeople that would do the work, but they weren't very organized. So, like if you had a meeting at 1, you were still in the traffic 20 minutes past that, so you were running late. Besides that, you have to remember that every contractor that you need, you call, they're like the managers of that company. They may speak English and fluently, but they will send for that project an employee that they don't understand English as well. So that's part of the uh, position of the property manager. But now after COVID, you will see getting good and decent tradespeople. It's very hard because due to the benefits of the government, lots of people decided to stop working and just give me the money and I'll sit in my house. So it's very difficult on that end.
Interesting. And so those benefits are still continuing to this day.
That's correct.
So yeah, that adds another layer of scarcity. I know a lot of people, they come down to Puerto Rico and they think, oh, I could fix and flip this house. It's so cheap. I just need some guys on the ground to help me. But kind of what I'm hearing, from other people and even our own experience trying to get tradespeople to come, it's very difficult. Is it worth it for people to like bring their own crew from the United States mainland or?
I think it's best if they have their own people that they've worked for, for years and you trust them and you have any good communication. But it's important to have at least a few of people from here in Puerto Rico because they know the stores and where to get better materials in the island because that's the situation here that you have to know where to get decent prices um, and people that know the terrain of working in these areas. So it's better to have people from here, but if you have guys on the mainland that you've worked with for many years, if you can bring him here as well, and they can be like the leader and help train new um, new contractors from here on the island. It's better.
I think it's really important to work with native Puerto Ricans on any project down there just because they know how things work and things seem to work a lot differently in some ways. It's who you
Yes.
know and what strings can you pull. And you made a really interesting point about supplies. I mean, people also forget, hey, this is an island and everything has to be shipped in via barge. How is the
Correct.
supply situation right now in terms of getting building supplies like concrete and cabinets and all of that?
So right now it's good. We're thankfully because we're still in the process of reconstruction from FEMA and from the hurricane and all that. So there's a lot of projects for construction in the island. So we have a lot, but you need to know where to get those supplies because there's like a lot of chain stores in here that they are all made, but after the COVID, you don't find anything. So you have to know other local hardware stores.
You manage properties, so you probably have a good sense of the rental market and what's in demand. So I have kind of a two-pronged question. What are the areas in demand? Is it long-term rentals or is it short-term rentals? Where are the best places for like a mainlander looking to invest? Like, what would you tell him this is a good kind of property to invest in?
So mainly um, due to COVID, there's lots of long-term rentals, and but they're moving for short for Airbnbs and some of the Act 20 people that come into the state and to the island that first need a property to start with until they look forward for their own permanent home. So you may use any short-term rentals, but on the end, it's better to have like a long-term for future and more decent income if you have good internet connection in your area or your property has a full generator.
You think it's better to invest in the long-term market versus the short-term market?
Correct, because people, if you get a property that has the full generator and good connectivity, you will most likely be quicker to get tenants that will get for the long term. Because, like due to the COVID, all everyone works from their home, so that's what people are looking for, getting more long term than any Airbnbs, and it's better because for you as an owner to deal with just one fixed tenant that keep changing all different people and different rentals, uh, and you won't know what they're like. So it's better to keep consistent with their long-term rental.
You made a really interesting point that I had almost forgotten about, and that's when you're going to Puerto Rico to live full time, you really want a generator because, in my experience, the electricity service wasn't 100% reliable. Is that still the case?
Yes, we're still having in lots of the areas in Puerto Rico trouble with electricity. Some areas, like every week, it will lose power. So it's important to have a place that has a full generator, and lots of people that come here from the mainland, the main issue that they're looking for in a property, if it has good internet connection, reliable, and has a full generator for emergencies, uh, they'll take it.
Good to know. So, getting back to the short term rental market, I'm sure after COVID, I'm sure there's a lot of people who had Airbnbs sitting empty. I imagine there's some of them got into trouble. What's the state of the short term rental market right now?
So at this moment, there's in here in Puerto Rico, you will find many Airbnbs working and getting income, but the government does very very quick changes. So one moment you will say that today we're banning Airbnbs until further notice of COVID. So you may run these Airbnbs if you're working with people from the mainland that come here, but to rent them to people from here in Puerto Rico, some of them are bit scared of the COVID. They're not going out to eat or go to hotels. You may not really rely on their income. You will just keep running with people that come from the mainland as well to vacation.
Do you manage short term rentals or do you just do long term?
Yes, I used to. I work with a few properties for Airbnbs, but we took a downfall for these areas at this moment. So we switched it to family members or people we know from the mainland that come here in Puerto Rico, uh, that they have to do the quarantine. Then those are the places to go. And since you have to be like 14 days of quarantine, and people travel for longer times here to cover those 14 and then have enough days to see the island.
So even though the Airbnb short-term rental picture looks bad right now, I know there's going to be some investors watching this thinking, oh, hey, I could swoop in, get some deals, and restart this whole thing when COVID blows by. So I'm curious, what are your fees for managing short-term rentals?
For short-term rentals, normally I charge around 10 or 20% of the rental for just running that Airbnb. And then if we're the ones who do the cleaning and maintenance, then we cover an extra fee for that. So there are many rates. I think 10 and 20% is more than acceptable. You may see other companies that will charge uh, 30% or something more.
And then for long-term rentals, which are, lower effort and lower maintenance than the short-term rentals, what do you charge for those?
For that, we normally charge 20% if we're going for long term and keep track of collections. But if everything, all the rental payments are all directly with the owner, we can lower that fee. But like I said, it's all of those can be around 10 or 20%.
Sounds like you offer everything from sort of a lighter weight service to full service. So where you'll collect the payments and handle the accounting and all of that. Are those held in separate accounts for each property, or how does that work?
For the rental, mainly try to keep their money in their own accounts. We don't want to hold any funds of any properties. The accounting that we do it on our office, but we run all the separate books for each company.
So if I have a rental and it's long-term and I want you to provide the service of finding me a tenant, how does that work and how much does it cost?
So for getting a rental tenant, we normally get a person that we have in the company that does real estate, and that person will promote and try to get uh, people interested in that location. We try to include that all those services as a package. In our mind, if there's no tenants, then we don't have work. So if we can get that tenant and keep that property running, then we'll get the percentage and we'll keep earning money as well.
So one of my worst nightmares as a landlord is having a deadbeat in there that stops paying or can't pay, even if they're not a deadbeat. It's a sad situation, but you know, when you have a mortgage payment, you've got to have someone in there who pays.
Sure.
So how often do you get into this situation where the tenant stops paying or can't pay, and how do you handle eviction?
Well, we've had around 4 situations like that. We have a person in legal in our company that does all the paperwork and takes over that process from beginning to end. And if there's a negotiation to do, uh, he'll do it and get a payment plan or something. Uh, he will work with that and with the owner.
I have heard that in Puerto Rico, the laws are very friendly to tenants. And so if you need to evict someone, how long does that process take?
In normal days, you may see people that will fight for months trying to get the people to get evicted. Like you said, they're very more pro tenants than the landlords. The only way that you can evict someone quicker is if they're doing something illegal or wrong, like, and you have proof of that. So that could help you. But if it's just due to payment or something, then it's very difficult on that end, and especially this era that lots of people aren't working and they're not getting much income, so their estates are very protected.
It sounds like this hasn't happened too often in your practice, which is probably a good thing. And I imagine that means you screen the tenants fairly well. What are you looking for when you screen the tenants? What's that process?
We ask them for all the financial information, get there if they have a job. We ask them for a financial statement from him, or if they're a couple, or all of them together. Evidence that they're working and they're full time and not part time. If they have other loans or any references where they were staying, see how their payments were, if they had any issues, we like to know that beforehand.
Yeah, my next door neighbor, when I was living there, advised me he had several rentals, and his advice was to rent to corporations.
That's correct.
What else would you tell mainlanders looking at investing in Puerto Rico?
Getting contractors and handyman to maintain your areas is very a bit expensive and hard to get someone who trusts, because you may see people that will bill you very cheap, but they're not gonna do a great job. Some of them are having experience of that. They maybe just lost their job and they just um, bought landscaping equipment, and yeah, I'll cut your grass for $10 and they'll do a horrific job.
I mean, unless you're hiring people for Dorado Beach, I think the services are generally less expensive down there. The landscaping and the repair and all that, at least from my experience here. But is there a gringo pricing versus non-gringo pricing?
Yeah, yes, there are people who took us mainly there on the gringo prices. They will like raise it because they will think that yeah, they coming from here, they must have money. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're investing in the Puerto Rico, so they're billionaires. There are some people that will try to do that, and they do that as well to people from here, Puerto Rico. So other thing is just to do a research on the areas. Many people from the mainland just go to Dorado or Palmas del Mar or Condado. Those are the areas that people know, and those are the areas that the properties are at the highest.
Yeah, so essentially, if you're thinking of investing on the island, you really need to come down here. You need to talk to people, a lot of people, to kind of understand how it works differently down on the island, and just be prepared for a bit of an adventure. And if you're not going to be on the island full time managing your properties, get a good property manager. That would be my advice. So Gerardo, thank you so much for taking this time to speak with me and enlighten us all about how things work. And I will go ahead and put your contact information in the description below the video so that people can reach out to you if they have questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.